Let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tearing down the architecture of data security, specifically tailored for all of you, the incredibly well-intentioned staff building digital tools right here in the Agua Fria district. We're going to map out the hidden pitfalls of digital architecture so you can build with total confidence. We're not here to scare you, right? We just want to explore practical, real-world ways to avoid accidental exposure. So let's get into it and fundamentally transform how we build our internal tools. Okay, here is our quick roadmap for today. Think of this as your pre-deployment checklist. We're hitting the real district threat, stopping public link sharing, API key management, avoiding unscoped queries, smart authentication, and finally, security as a design principle. Let's roll. Section 1. The real district security threat, myth versus reality. It's time to completely reframe how we think about cybersecurity in our schools. When I say cybersecurity, what pops into your head? You probably picture, a hooded hacker in a dark basement furiously typing to break through our firewalls. But let's be real for a second. Ask yourself, who actually poses the biggest daily risk to our district systems? The answer might actually surprise you. The biggest threat isn't some shadowy external attacker. For us, building tools inside the district, the biggest data exposure risks come from right inside the house. It's usually a well-intentioned staff member who just accidentally leaves a digital backdoor wide open while trying to, say, build a helpful student roster app. It's almost always about an honest mistake, not malicious intent. Moving right along to Section 2, stopping accidental public link sharing, specifically securing Google Workspace. Look, Google Workspace makes sharing incredibly easy. That's its superpower, right? But it's also our most common source of data exposure. Think about it. An enthusiastic teacher builds a brilliant Sheets-based dashboard. If they use that anyone with the link setting for a file containing student personally identifiable information, bam, that data is technically accessible to the entire internet, literally anyone. Instead, you've got to lock that down. Always use domain-restricted sharing, restricted strictly to Agua Fria district email addresses only. Now it gets a little tricky when we're talking about app script. When you deploy an app script web app, they actually have totally separate sharing settings from the core script file. You could accidentally deploy a web app to anyone, even anonymous, meaning zero login is required. Obviously, huge red flag. Always force the system to require district account authentication. Just select anyone within the Agua Fria district before you ever grant access. All right, Section 3, managing API keys securely, the safe sandbox. If you're hooking your tools up to powerful external APIs, we absolutely have to talk about handling those keys. If you're building AI-enabled tools, creating your first API key is super easy through Google's AI Studio. It is the perfect sandbox. But listen closely. Here is the golden rule for the Agua Fria district. Select the Gemini API free tier and absolutely never, ever enter your payment information. Seriously. The free tier of the Gemini API is incredibly robust. It is more than enough to handle any internal tool you're building. You simply do not need to attach a credit card to innovate in this district. Now, once you have that key, you've got to guard it with your life. Hard coding an API key directly into your script, that is literally a career-limiting mistake. Why? Because a hard-coded key in a Google Apps Script project is completely visible to anyone, and I mean anyone, who has edit access to that file. Think of an API key like the master key to the whole school. You wouldn't just leave that sitting out on the front reception desk, would you? Of course not. So you have to avoid these common mistakes that leave your credentials in plain sight. Don't drop the key directly into a variable assignment, and definitely don't leave it in a code comment thinking, oh, I'm just leaving a note for myself. Treat it like your bank password, because it essentially is one. So how do we fix this? Secret management. Instead of hard coding, you hide your keys safely inside script properties. This is a server-side storage mechanism that is completely invisible in the code itself. You just call it at runtime using the built-in property service command to fetch the key. It's like locking your master password in a digital vault where only the server has the combination. Section 4, avoiding unscoped data queries, getting more than you asked for. Let's talk about another invisible but massive risk in your code. When you write a script to query a database, you make a choice. An unscoped query basically says, hey, give me absolutely everything you've got. Now, I get it. We've all done it. They're way faster to write, and honestly, they're a lot easier to debug when you're rushing. But here's the catch. They dramatically inflate your exposure surface by pulling massive amounts of unneeded student data right into your app's memory. Let's visualize this. Think about the tiny sliver of data your app actually needs to function. That's the slice you want. The rest of the database? That's a massive, unnecessary liability you've just exposed simply for the sake of convenience. You have to build the muscle memory of writing scoped queries. Specify exactly which columns and rows you need. Always build the tightest, most constrained query that gets the job done. Which brings us to Section 5, Smart Authentication and Validation, checking the front door. Okay, so your backend is fully locked down, right? But now you have to secure the front door. For district tools, the baseline standard is OAuth via Google, so users log in with their Agua Fria district account. But you've got to think deeper than just, is this person an employee? Ask yourself, what is their actual role? We have to enforce the principle of least privileged access. A classroom teacher, they only need to see data for their specific kids. A counselor, only their assigned caseload. Trust me, if you don't build this role-based access in from day one, retrofitting it later is an absolute nightmare. And it doesn't stop there. You've got to treat every single text field, every dropdown, every file upload as a potential attack surface. This is where input validation saves the day. You have to verify that what a user types matches your exact expectations before the app processes a single thing. If it's a student ID field, check that it's only numbers and exactly the right length. A date field, make sure it's a real calendar date. Proper validation is exactly what separates a messy weekend prototype from a rock-solid production tool. Finally, Section 6, Security as a Design Principle, Building for the Future. Let's bring it all home. I really want to emphasize that cybersecurity isn't just some abstract problem for the IT department to deal with. It is a foundational design principle for every single district builder. And yes, that means you. I want this to become your mantra. Every architectural decision is also a security decision. The best builders in the district don't just bolt security on at the end like duct tape. They design for it from the very first line of code. If you use everything we talked about today as your pre-deployment checklist, your future self is going to be incredibly proud of the reliable, safe tools you build. So, keeping all of this in mind, I want to leave you with one final, provocative question before you open up your editor to write your next line of code. Ask yourself, is your next tool building a solution or simply building a new vulnerability? Thanks for diving into this explainer with me today. Stay curious and happy and safe building.